Tesla betting it all on what Apple just gave up on.
Guys, welcome to the All Future Podcast, where we talk about tech coming in the future throughout the week. Thanks for subscribing if you have. If you haven't, give us a shot. Give us a shot, especially if you're into hearing about dystopian hellscapes like self-driving cars covering our cities. Or possibly the utopian version of the future where we never have to drive or do anything and AI and robots do it all. Ryan, you've got a Tesla channel. For those of you guys who don't know, Ryan has a very big, successful Tesla YouTube channel. So this is the first time we've made a dedicated video here talking about Tesla.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear your read on this because I normally don't get to talk back to my screen when I'm watching your videos because I'll just watch it at home and I'm like, oh, Ryan, I have a point here. I'm so used to just talking to you when I disagree with you and I can't through the screen. But now, in person, we can talk about Tesla for real.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. So Tesla, a lot of ups and downs recently, but evidently is kind of going all in on the, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, Robotaxi service, independent driverless cars taking people around.
Yes.
Ryan, tell me what's going on with this stuff. Fill me in.
Well, yeah, so there's a lot of history here, and I find it especially interesting that we're seeing this kind of shift come right as Apple has canceled the Project Titan. Not only did they cancel making a car, their own Apple car, but it seemed like a huge part of that car, and the reason they canceled it is because they wanted it to be self-driving, and they have since given up on that. And a lot of the arguments there were like, they're trying to collect data in-house, but to solve the problem of self-driving, it's going to require tons of data, and Tesla has been doing that for a long time. So I think it's been years. It's been at least since 2017. I should actually look when the first real version of this came out, but they've been shipping full self-driving. It's controversial as to whether they should call it that, as to whether they should be selling this, because it's very clearly in beta, but they've been working on this every year, and Elon every year, it seems, says this is the year we're solving it. It's almost become a running joke that it's like, oh, hey, when's it going to be ready? This year? Also, it's funny, but it's also frustrating if you're a customer who, like, I bought this with the promise of this being self-driving in the future, and then it doesn't actually arrive. And so it seems like it's one of those pipe dreams that's never going to arrive. But I think about a month ago, they released this new version that is like end-to-end AI neural network thing. And they also are no longer compute constrained at Tesla themselves. And then they shipped this version. They changed the name from FSD beta to full self-driving supervised. And they have now given a free trial, 1-month trial, to all Tesla owners. Anyone who has a Tesla should be able to run this because they have a full self-driving computer and they have all of the cameras necessary to enable this system. So, yeah, this all comes into the Robotaxi thing, which is... let me get your question first.
Well, yeah, when we say full self-driving available in the Tesla, can we go outside the store, walk out there, go to your Tesla, get in it, and I literally just say, hey, take me to 7-Eleven, and it just takes me?
Yes.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Have you done that?
I have done that. And
maybe not to 7-Eleven specifically, but just in general. How's it work?
It's pretty good.
Okay.
It's kind of like watching a student driver, though.
Okay. Well, what do you mean by that? It's a little jerky, a little indecisive?
A little jerky, indecisive, and very cautious, which is like what you kind of want. You don't want it to suddenly speed through something, but using it day to day, like if I'm doing a commute somewhere, it's just not aggressive enough for me to actually want to use. Because I'm like, go, or like the cars behind me are like, you can go a little bit faster than the speed limit, and it's very locked in, And then there's times where you do have to take over. So that's the point where it's not actual self-driving yet. It's still supervised and still requires you to be there.
What would be an example of that? When do I have to take over driving?
There's been random cases I've seen online where like it randomly read the lane wrong, and it's like
just
turning
seeing something weird, and you go, I got to take it.
And then you have to take over. My experience is usually I take over because it's suddenly dropping the speed because it read a speed limit sign, but no one else is actually doing that. So I'm just like, whatever, I'll take over. Like on a freeway is one of the big cases. And then certain turns where it's just like, okay, it's not able to take this turn because I'm crossing 2 lanes of traffic. I have to get all the way over here, and I have a gap, and I just want to take it now. It would probably get there eventually. A lot of the things are that way for me when taking it over. It's like it would do it, it just wouldn't do it fast enough. It is promising as to what this new version brings, but the crazy thing is that it seems like Tesla has now completely bet everything on this because of how confident Elon is in this, because he is still the CEO of Tesla.
I can't think of one mistake Elon's ever made, so this should be totally good.
Yeah.
So that's my next question as kind of a layperson when it comes to Tesla and Tesla news and things like that. I know there was just all these layoffs at Tesla, right? Like, is that part of kind of like this restructuring kind of thought of it, or is that, does Elon? I guess you don't know what Elon thinks. I don't think anyone does. But in your mind, does he see the future of this company more as the self-driving, and maybe even self-driving as a service kind of thing, the Robotaxi model, and not someone who sells mid to high-end sedans to people?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it seems like his future vision is first self-driving, but what they're also doing with their self-driving and Robotaxi is solving real-world AI. And that's where their humanoid robot comes in. And he's said, like, the humanoid robot is the thing that makes Tesla the biggest company ever. I'm just stating these things.
Yeah, no,
I'm not saying I agree with them.
You since we've done this podcast, I've gotten on board with humanoid robots. So
Yeah.
I'm into the humanoid robot. I'm not sure if driving data is the exact thing you need there. But so that's kind of where the driving is. Like to use a kind of a pun here, the driving force behind these decisions is developing a super advanced spatial recognition AI stuff.
Yeah. And it seems like we haven't got a ton of confirmation here, but we saw all at the same time. Elon saying they're streamlining things. They do this every couple years. They have to streamline and restructure things. 2 big executives left the company, and then they laid off 10% of their workforce very quickly. Yeah, it just seems like it's very possible that Elon said, we're canceling the $25,000 car, which was supposed to be their next big thing, is like this more affordable car that's electric for people to get and drive. But we also knew they were working on a Robotaxi. So it seems like he's like, that's canceled. Robotaxi is all we're doing. And it's potentially possible that these executives were like, cool, I think I'm good. That's speculation. But
my next question is, does Elon know this already exists? Like, there are Robotaxis.
Yeah.
They're only in certain cities. Here in LA, they have Waymo is a Robotaxi service, which is a driverless taxi that you can summon and get. It's not like getting an Uber now. It's not like any rando can call one up. But if you are an approved user for them, you can call in a Robotaxi. This stuff already exists. What is the difference that Elon thinks he's going to be able to achieve with Tesla and their tech versus what's already out there?
So the difference is geofencing. So Waymo can only operate in a certain area versus what Tesla is developing is an AI that can drive your car anywhere in any situation. It can get around construction, and we see it do that successfully. I've had it do it. So it's not just like it can only drive in LA. It could drive people anywhere immediately. And the theory as well is that it could turn my car that I already have into a Robotaxi that I can send out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a little less confident on that, especially since they're like unveiling a new Robotaxi, dedicated Robotaxi. But yeah, that's the idea and the vision that's different there.
That is cool. And yeah, for you guys, probably the vast majority of people in the world who don't live in cities with driverless taxis, like the Waymo and Cruise, I think is the other company in California that does it. They're not in LA, I don't think. They're just in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think they got shut down, actually.
Did they get shut down? Okay,
yeah.
Well, yeah, so great. So they're gone.
Zoox is one working on it, at least.
Yeah, but they're using local mapping data as well. That's why they have like a kind of a certain area that they can go in, is because they have all the streets and the stop signs and the crosswalks all pre-programmed in. So there's like, in LA, it's a pretty big zone. I mean, it's almost all of LA really is covered by it, but you can't be like, and now take me to Vegas. It's like, oh no. Yeah, cool. I guess it's like with all things Tesla, and this maybe I'll be a little bit of a devil's advocate, if you will.
Good.
It seems like, based on my anecdotal kind of knowledge of Tesla and Elon Musk, is that they continually overpromise tech that never shows up or is in a weakened version when it does. Realistically, with these sensor types that are on the Tesla now, because another comparison between Tesla and something like Waymo is that Waymo's got like a rack of stuff on the roof.
Yeah.
Like it's got a ton of sensors, a ton of stuff, And the Tesla, it's much more. Tesla looks like a regular car. Now, there are a ton of sensors on it, but not nearly as much as these other kind of self-driving systems have. Yeah, like how far away are Tesla robotaxis really? Like, is this really something we're going to see in 2 years or something?
Yeah, I personally don't think so. I think it would take longer than that, and I think it's still going to be more of a timeline because on top of it being able to do it safely and better than a human, you need them to build out the service, but then you also need regulatory approval, which is going to be huge and going to take quite some time for Tesla to actually achieve. But I've heard a lot of people, including people like Lex Friedman, talk about how there's two different approaches to solving self-driving. There is the LiDAR approach where you have tons of sensors, everything to make sure it can do this. And then you have the vision approach, which is what Tesla is doing here. It's just using camera data and the AI is being trained on camera data so that you can install this for way cheaper than a LiDAR system into a car. You can produce this robotaxi for way cheaper. Yeah, Lex Friedman has said that the vision approach is the better approach long term, but it's long term. So that is always the question here, is the question of time. And I still kind of think Tesla might end up having to flip on this. They might end up like, okay, we're going to build this robotaxi. They're like scaling up the factory. But then they're like, okay, we have to add a steering wheel. Like we have to get this out the door. We figured out how to make it affordable, so we can get this out the door to customers, but it's drivable for now. And then we'll remove the steering wheel in the future. But it seems like that could be a big thing happening right now. Is they're about to bet a lot on this. And I've talked about this with Andrew, our other co-host, and he said if it fails, it will be the biggest, downfall of a company, but if it succeeds, it will be seen as the biggest decision ever made by a company.
Maybe. Elon Musk playing 4D chess on us or something like that. But here's the other thing I would bring up is that what's the ability to actually implement this practically when you're facing, I think, two big headwinds. One, government regulation.
Yeah.
Even the robotaxi services that are approved, they're approved for limited areas. And they are monitored. Like there's a remote driver that can take over. So it's not like a true autonomous system, right? Yeah. It's like, there's a human in the loop somewhere in a lot of these systems, right? Here in LA, there's I want to say there's just 50 of these things, which is a pretty small amount. So especially if you're Elon and you're like, I'm going to bet the company on this, a company that is already producing a consumer product at scale. Like I'm not a startup here,
Yeah.
How many of these things do you need to get out in the wild for it to make financial sense to do it? How much money is it going to cost you in lobbying and political points to get them into cities? How much goodwill are you going to take a hit? Because every time these things are introduced, people like the Teamsters Union, all these, they all protest this stuff. In San Francisco, you see a lot of people putting the orange cones on the hood of them so they stop, kind of screwing with them, I guess, in a lot of ways. So I mean, there's a ton of challenges here. This is a risk, and it has a really good chance of looking completely stupid if it doesn't work. And I would argue that almost more likely will fail than succeed, and that's why it would be such a massive success if it does work, because they're so just the headwinds on this are pretty intense.
Yeah, it seems, he's had this vision for a long time, and so I think it's that this latest version of full self-driving, he's like, okay, this is it. It's going to happen this time, and it's only a matter of time. And yeah, like you said, if it succeeds, it will be incredible. But it does worry a lot of people and myself a little bit because Tesla has so many cool things going on. And I really think they were going to make a more affordable car that would appeal to the masses, and they could scale it up and make electric cars more affordable for everyone. And tons of companies would have to then compete with that, and it would be a good thing. And instead, it's like, no, that's in the past already. We're doing robotaxis, but that also still is some speculation. We don't for sure. We haven't heard it from Tesla that car is canceled. There's some sort of big shakeup happening, and I think it relates to this, and then gambling on the future a bit.
And another problem you're going to have is the public perception of Tesla right now.
Yeah.
Particularly because of Elon Musk, not necessarily because of Tesla, but the public perception of Elon. And I mean, if you look at I mean, Tesla stock, I think it's down something like 30% or something year to date right now. Pretty brutal. Electric cars famously in kind of a slump right now in terms of sales, or leveling off, plateau. I don't know what you want to call it. And depending on the model you look at, you probably
it's the growth is plateauing.
The growth is plateaued. There you go. That's
slowing down.
That's the correct phrase I was looking for. The growth has plateaued. So, and what you're talking about, like is Tesla going to run its own taxi service? Like, is that the idea, right? Or are they going to like just sell these to other companies? Because the other problem you're going to have is things like the I believe it was Hertz, the rental company, like that CEO basically got kicked out because he did this huge bet on electric vehicles, Teslas in particular, and it turned out they lost a ton of money because it cost a lot of money to maintain that Tesla fleet. How much money is it going to cost to maintain robotaxis? Probably a lot more than it costs to maintain a traditional taxi service. And the other problem is you already have a disruptor in the space that has undercut everything. It's the Uber Lyft of it all, right? Like, like me as a consumer, how cheap and easy is it for me to get an Uber or a Lyft versus the Robotaxi? What am I going to pick there? Especially because you're also having to sell consumers on something that's going to be uncomfortable to them. I've never driven in a Tesla with just the new version of full self-driving. I have been on the highway in kind of the traditional version of self-driving that it had, which is really more of a smart cruise control, maybe is the way to describe it. And I've been in other vehicles. My Jeep now has like a smart cruise control kind of system, like that's kind of becoming more and more common. But even that is unnerving if you are not used to it. Like when you are in the Tesla and you do the thing, where you hit the blinker and it changes lanes by itself, especially if you're in a Los Angeles freeway and that other lane is going 10 miles an hour faster than you or something like that, like you're like, whoa, it's kind of freaky. So I think you're going to have, this is a hard thing to sell people on, I think. But I think it's going to come because the truth is, at the end of the day, this is a better system. And you look at, there's kind of a few like famous accidents from self-driving cars. I think they actually, maybe it killed a pedestrian at one point in like Arizona or something like that. Not Tesla, but it's one of these other things, or hit someone. Some tragedies involved with these things, but at a much lower rate than human drivers, right? That's always the thing is, it has accidents, but it's less likely than a human. So, and then as this technology improves, even less accidents, right? And car accidents, easily one of the most preventable deaths and injury things in the civilized world. We can crack that, like stop accidents on the road, and this technology kind of offers the promise of that. But it seems like a long road to hoe, as they would say back on the farm. Like it's a long way to go on this thing.
And there's a number of things there too. There's the, like you said, regulatory approval, but then also Tesla flipping on liability. So right now you're still liable. If I'm using full self-driving and it hits someone, it's me. It's not Tesla's fault because I was supposed to take over. Like that's the agreement you agreed to on screen when you turn on full self-driving. And so they would have to then become liable if anything goes wrong, which I think is another level.
Like you're not going to make the passenger liable for your taxi service. It's like, I'm just going to the bar here. Like I don't want to be liable for this. Like
but it does raise that question that you're kind of bringing up long term, is could it make it safer? And it's like probably. And I think in the long term, like very long view, it's going to be that self-driving cars are the cars that you have to have, or you don't even own a car.
That's the future, right? Post-ownership of cars is the future, right? There's going to be people who are hobbyist car owners, and people maybe in extreme rural areas, or people who need practical reasons to have a delivery van or whatever it is. But I think the average person is probably not even going to own a car in the future, and you're going to call a Robotaxi to pick you up. And it's going to be whatever, some kind of subscription service, and you can drive the Robotaxi, and when you go out of its zone, the steering wheel comes out the dash, and then you can drive it or whatever. That's probably what is going to happen. You've got tech problems with that. You've got a cultural problem with that. You've got legal problems with that. So, I mean, it might be like 70, 80 years before we get all this stuff ironed out, right?
I'm fascinated by the whole thing because of how deeply they're invested in it, how good self-driving is actually, this new version, but how much improvement it needs. And at the same time, it is AI, so we're talking all the time about AI and its exponential growth. So are they on the right track here? Are they going to succeed? I don't know, but I really hope they still make a good, affordable electric car in the meantime.
We'll see. I'm definitely looking forward to taking my Robotaxi home from the bar drunk.